After 6 months of living and studying abroad in Taipei, it was finally time to fly home. For my final night in Taipei, I went out with my friends for dinner at Cache City, which is this incredible hot pot place in the Shida Guting area. It is super cheap and delicious. And hot pot was definitely the perfect meal to end off my incredible time in Taiwan. After enjoying our complimentary ice cream, we head down the street to the Shrine Bar, which is a cafe/bar that I pass by on my walk to school every single day, so I thought it would be the perfect place to spend my final night in Taipei with my friends. We just got some cocktails and enjoyed the amazing vibes there before I said my final goodbyes to them and head back to my place to get some sleep. The next morning I woke up super early while it was still dark outside, and I cleared everything out before my friend Jonathan came to pick me up. Since my flight was in the morning, I watched the sunrise from Jonathan's car as we drove to the Taoyuan airport. And during this long drive, I had so much time to reflect on my experience in Taipei and all of the amazing adventures that I went on, as well as all of the incredible people that I met on exchange. Since I had gone to all the places that I wanted to see and I had already said goodbye to most of my friends, I felt ready to leave, but I was definitely still sad about it. Once I got to the airport, I said my final goodbye to Jonathan before checking into my flight. And since this was pretty much during the peak time of COVID, while every country was locked down, almost all of the flights were canceled and the airport was pretty much completely deserted. And since I was flying internationally, I had to get to the airport extra early to make sure everything was smooth, so I ended up walking around this empty airport for a couple of hours before I boarded my flight. Luckily, there were some pretty interesting little exhibits that they set up around the airport to show off some of the interesting tourist attractions in Taipei. And I got to look at all of them and relive a lot of my memories because I'd pretty much gone to almost every single one of them. After walking around the airport for a couple of hours, I grabbed some breakfast from a food court and then head to my gate for boarding. My first flight was from Taipei to Tokyo, and as you can tell by the gate as well as the plane itself, it was very empty and there were not a lot of people on the flight. Once we arrived in Tokyo, I had to switch terminals, so an attendant led me to take the shuttle, and I took that to the other terminal to catch my next flight, which was from Tokyo to Vancouver. As you can tell, this airport was also very empty because of COVID, but luckily I found this ramen restaurant that was open and I got to enjoy some ramen during my short layover in Japan. And I also got to buy a bunch of Japanese snacks from the gift shops. I bought a bunch of these giant Pockies as well as a bunch of interesting Kit Kat flavors, which is always my favorite when I'm in Japan. Then I went back to my gate to wait for boarding, and as you can see, there were a couple more people on this flight, but it was still very, very empty, obviously because of the pandemic. And I did notice that people at the Tokyo airport were much more cautious than in Taiwan, and there were a lot of people wearing full-on hazmat suits, which I was not prepared for. But anyways, I landed in Vancouver safely and had a very short layover there before catching my last flight, which was a domestic flight from Vancouver to Toronto. I was honestly surprised by how busy it was at the Vancouver airport. It was a lot more busy than the 2 previous airports that I had stayed at, but I guess that makes sense because it was a domestic flight, and I'm pretty sure at the time Canada's cases were relatively low. But anyways, after over 24 hours of flying, I was so tired, so my dad came to pick me up from the airport, and I quarantined for the next 2 weeks in my room at home. But yeah, I guess this was the conclusion to my exchange videos. I hope you enjoyed watching me fly home during the pandemic, and I'll catch you in another video. Bye!